Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LiUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferenc.
Yet another milestone for the UAW. Pizza Hut workers strike in Los Angeles. Factory jobs take a dip. And today on the show, the Professional Soccer Referees Association and the Association of Professional Flight Attendants. Welcome to the Monday, March 11th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. We have 2 guests on the show today. We're going to start things off with Peter Manikowski. Peter is president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association, PSRA officials.com. A little background on Peter. Spent 16 years in Major League Soccer as an assistant referee with over 226 regular season matches and 3 MLS Cups, 2 U.S. Open Cup finals. He opened a Manikowski Law several years ago. That was in 2021, and spent 15 years in finance as a statistician and economist and a labor economist for several labor unions. He's been doing that for the past 8 years. A little background on the Professional Soccer Referees Association. Now, back in 2009, it became necessary to have an organization that represented the officials and their careers, those officials working in Major League Soccer. So they formed the PSRA. Well, in 2013, the PSRA became the official certified labor union for officials in Major League Soccer, the first soccer officials union in U.S. history. And they completed their first collective bargaining agreement ahead of the 2014 season. So that was 10 years ago. And if you go to 2021, they completed the unionization process and became the certified labor union for the professional officials employed by soccer. So we'll talk a little bit about the history. We'll talk about what Major League Soccer is doing right now, and it's not good. Locking out officials from the Professional Soccer Referees Association. Question is, how did this happen? And that's exactly why Peter is going to be on the show today. So he'll be our first guest. Again, the website, PSRAofficials.com. Julie Hedrick will be joining us later in the show. You may recall, it was about a month ago. It was actually on February 13th. There was a day of action. They called it a Worldwide Flight Attendant Day of Action. And a number of flight attendants and various unions took part. Today we're going to focus on American Airlines. Now, the Association of Professional Flight Attendants is the certified collective bargaining representative for attendants at American Airlines. The website is APFA.org. It is through the APFA that they're able to negotiate fair contracts, promote interests in Washington, D.C., guarantee their rights, and also settle disputes with the company. And right now, they are at an impasse, and this is a very, very crucial week. Just to take you back to what happened about a month ago, thousands of flight attendants, we're talking about 100,000 actually, across 3 labor unions picketed outside airports in the U.S., the U.K., and Guam. The protests included cabin crew members from 24 airlines, including Alaska Air, Southwest, United, and again, American Airlines. It turns out in the past 2 years, unions representing pilots, flight attendants, and maintenance workers have all advocated for higher wages, better scheduling, and other benefits, as the airlines, well, they're doing pretty good. You know, post-pandemic, they're making a whole lot of money. Now, unlike the flight attendants, the pilots across the major airlines have secured new labor deals, including bumper pay hikes and other benefits. Flight attendants, they're left behind, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about on the show today with Julie Hedrick. Again, she's the national president of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, offering fixed income, real estate, and equity investment options to clients from coast to coast. And they've been doing this for almost 100 years, since 1928. BoydWatterson.com for more information. Well, the UAW announced that 30% of the more than 1,000 employees at a Toyota plant, this would be in Missouri, have signed cards in support of a union. Now, that threshold, the 30%, is the minimum mark required under federal labor law to call for a union election. However, the UAW, well, they're saying they're going to wait until they achieve 70% card support to call for an election. Now, the milestone is the latest in a string of organizing advances at auto manufacturers based outside of the UAW's traditional geographic footprint. We talked recently about the union achieving 50% card support at a VW plant in Tennessee. And last week, a Mercedes-Benz plant in Alabama also hit the 50% support mark. So things are going in the right direction for our brothers and sisters in the UAW. Sean Fain, he made no bones about it. He said after they got the big three, we're going after the non-union plants. And right now there are 13 non-union plants that they're targeting, all of them in the South, right-to-work states. Pizza Hut workers in Los Angeles are on strike. 6 current and former employees of the chain's restaurant in historic Filipino town are in the midst of a 3-day strike over wage theft and poor working conditions. Get this. The workers allege that management stole $81,443 in wages in a complaint filed with the California Labor Commissioner's office. It's amazing how accurate they are on this one here. The strike is the latest of workers calling out poor conditions at the store. Employees protested layoffs and abusive scheduling. This happened in a strike in January. And the strikers are supported by organizers from the newly formed California Fast Food Workers Union, which is aiming to organize broadly across the fast food sector. Let's go to France now, where the General Confederation of Labor, or the CGT, is threatening to strike during the upcoming Paris Olympics. The union's general secretary cited the need to address issues ranging from overtime compensation, child care, and housing during the expected massive, and I mean massive, influx of tourists. Now, that strike would also include public sector workers such as hospital staff. Oh, that's one to watch. This kind of reminds me of the Super Bowl, where the hospitality workers in Las Vegas were saying, you know what, you better get this contract signed or there's going to be some problems for the Super Bowl. And guess what? They got it done. They got it done. Total non-farm payroll employment rose by 275,000 last month, and the unemployment rate actually increased to just shy of 4%, 3.9%, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The job gains incurred in healthcare, in government, food services, and drinking establishments, also social assistance, and in transportation and warehousing. Breaking it down here, healthcare added 67,000 jobs, which was above the average monthly gain of 58,000 over the past year. Ambulatory healthcare services up 28,000, hospitals up 28,000, nursing and residential care facilities up 11,000. That just shows me that we have an aging population here. Employment in transportation and warehousing rose by 20,000. Now, the downside is manufacturing. Factories lost 4,000 jobs in February. And Scott Paul, who we're going to feature on the show later this week from the Alliance of American Manufacturing, said, while there are historic investments in factory construction underway in America, interest rates and borrowing costs are holding back manufacturing job growth. That, says Paul, is compounded by global weakness, which is exacerbated by China's industrial overcapacity and economic challenges, thus limiting the possibilities for U.S. export growth and putting our factory jobs at risk. Scott points out that Biden was right during his State of the Union address to highlight the policy and manufacturing success stories that we have seen so far, like Buy American laws. He said, I'm optimistic for the future of manufacturing jobs, but we cannot overlook the very difficult environment that factories are facing right now. And you can read more at americanmanufacturing.org. By the way, construction employment continued to trend up in construction, up 23,000 jobs in the month of February alone. Certainly good news for the building trades. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to check in with the Professional Soccer Referees Association. Don't go away.
This is America's Workforce.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LiUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LiUNA at LiUNA.org. That's LiUNA.org.
The Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 ironworker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great ironworker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
This segment of America's Workforce is brought to you by Survey and Ballot Systems. SBS has been providing unions with secure and flexible election options for over 30 years. Visit surveyandballotsystems.com to learn more.
Hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland at 216-881-1802. Call Music Talent of Cleveland as your dependable source for professional musicians in Northeast Ohio. Union musicians add harmony to weddings, elegance to parties, and uplifting music for all events. Music Talent of Cleveland contracts solo and ensemble musicians as well as bands and orchestras for single engagements. So hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland today. 216-881-1802. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast. By the way, this next segment is brought to you by Blue Cross and Blue Shield's National Labor Office. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. Well, in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. And today, Blue Cross and Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families. Working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. Learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. All right, let's go to line number 1 and welcome a newcomer to the show. I always like more newcomers coming to America's Workforce. There's so many in organized labor. AFL-CIO alone, 12.5 million strong. And joining us right now is Peter Manikowski. Peter is president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association, website PSRAofficials.com, and they have a problem. They're locked out, been locked out since February 18th. We're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to get a little familiar with the Professional Soccer Referees Association and Peter's background. Peter, welcome to America's Workforce. Thanks for joining us today. And the first question I have to ask you, now you are a referee with the Professional Soccer Referees Association. What about playing the game? Was that part of your growing up stage or what? Talk to me about that.
Well, I love playing, but I wasn't the best player when I was a player. So at a young age, I switched over to refereeing and never looked back.
I got you. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Boston, but then moved to a place outside of Chicago, Illinois. And over there, I was fortunate enough to start working in the Big Ten for soccer. And then from there, moved on to the pros.
And I see that all told, 16 years in Major League Soccer as assistant referee, and well over 200 regular season matches and 3 MLS Cups. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good track record there. But your background here, I understand now you're a lawyer and you're a labor economist. You work with a number of labor unions. Talk to me about that. How many unions? Maybe you could throw out a couple names here.
Sure. So I'm president of the PSRA. I spend most of my time doing that, and I've been an officer with them for 11 years now, and we've really had a good run from initial certification to a first contract and up on through. And then from there, I started working with AMFA, which is the Association of Aircraft Mechanics. And AMFA is, about 4,000 members or so, with mechanics at Southwest, Alaska, Horizon, WestJet in Canada, and a couple other places. And that's an excellent project that we're working on over there. And then I've also started to do some work for TWU 556. And TWU 556 is the Southwest Airlines flight attendants. Right. As well as some other labor unions in New York, local police association there, and some other unions as well. And those have been excellent projects, trying to push wages as high as possible, work rules as high as possible, and trying to get as much money in the contracts as possible.
I know that's a challenge.
Excellent time and excellent career choice for sure.
Well, then Lynn Montgomery from TWU 556, right?
That's right. I just talked to her on Friday.
Yeah. How's she doing, by the way? They're still struggling trying to get a contract, aren't they?
Well, that's the latest. I was part of the tentative agreement that was voted down a few months ago, and there have been some efforts to reconvene at the table with the company and the NMB. But I'll leave it at that for the moment because there's a confidentiality order from the NMB on that one. I gotcha.
Okay, right now though, you guys are locked out at the the Professional Soccer Referees Association. So what the heck is going on?
So we started negotiating with our employer, it's called PRO, and Major League Soccer back in October. We had some discussions before that, but in October we started in earnest. The tentative agreement came out for membership ratification in mid-February, and the members voted that down by 95.8%. A resounding no vote, which caused our committee to go back to the table. I'm lead negotiator on that committee, and we went back to the table to try to make a second agreement. In the interim, and before the start of the regular season, the company locked our guys out. 100 officials on the street, now paying covert payments and trying to make ends meet. And since then, we haven't had any movement at the table to try to make a second agreement.
So who's playing referee right now?
They have replacement referees going. Those scab referees have worked now 3 matches, probably a total of 45 matches or so. That's normally our work. And I'm not sure quite where they're finding these people. They have some retired referees, some referees who had really never worked adult soccer before, and management is doing the replay jobs.
Wait a minute. Let's stop right there. They've got people reffing that never reffed before. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, no, never reffed in the adult divisions. They might have refereed in youth divisions or the college divisions, but this is new stuff. For them.
Bottom line, they're kind of learning things right now, right?
Learning on the job, and it's really come to a detriment to the quality of play, and the quality of the experience for the fans and the teams as the players, as you might expect.
Now, I was reading earlier, you started this organization back in 2009. Has this ever happened before in the course of years? It did?
It did. So back in 2014, that's when we were actually negotiating our first collective bargaining agreement. And the negotiations of the first CBA went past the start of the regular season back in 2014, and the employer did the same thing in 2014. That lockout lasted 11 days, I want to say, and similar situation. Management working, replacement scab officials coming in, and finally that was settled, but it was trouble.
Well, that was 11 days. This one's going a little longer than that. It started on February 18th. Do we have anything on the table here? Are you guys going to meet here soon, or is it just nothing?
We met by Zoom a few times, and then we met in Manhattan last week. And there's really no movement. What's interesting to see is the company's tactics on these things, as we expected, that they were going to open up or reopen in a potentially worse position than they had before. I don't know if you want to go into the details of that.
Yes, definitely. That's what this show's all about. You mentioned tactics that my eyes lit up. What are they doing to you?
Sure. So they've cooked up what's known as a dual track approach after the failed ratification vote. The first track being revote the TA by a date certain, and that happens to be this afternoon. Revote that thing, or they will resume negotiations from a position that they had back in January. And those are the two tracks that are on the table for our committee. These tactics they're old news, but that's what's going on, and they're trying to really weaken the resolve of our membership, and it's actually at the moment having the opposite effect, which is to embolden the membership, and we're getting messages and feedback from our members to push harder because they don't like these tactics. These are nonsense. And then on the union side, we made a counter proposal that we wanted to ensure a ratifiable agreement, and so we made a proposal accordingly, even a counter proposal after that. So the two sides are really talking past each other. One with, we're not going to throw anything new on the table, and the other to the union to try to make a ratifiable agreement, and we'll bargain in good faith to make it happen.
But your point is that this has really emboldened the union, and I'm reading you have 260 members in the union, but the lockout is affecting 100. Is that pretty accurate?
That's about right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And we actually have a second CBA on property, which covers the referees in the National Women's Soccer League. Mm-hmm. And United Soccer Leagues, and a couple other places. That's about 85 members who are under that one, and that CBA has 3 years left on it. In fact, that season just kicked off this past weekend to a great success. So it really goes to show when there's a good agreement in place, people are happy to go to work, and people are really enthusiastic about it. And then when you don't have a contract in place, it can truly be a disaster, which is what the league is experiencing right now by using its scab officials.
No argument there, my man. None. Peter, I got to take a quick break here. Peter Manikowski joining us on our live line today, serves as president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association. The website is PSRAofficials.com. They've been locked out since February 18th. We'll continue with Peter after this. Later in the show, we're going to check in with Julie Hedrick. Julie is president of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, which is the certified collective bargaining representative for American Airlines flight attendants. It's all part of America's Workforce. Back in a few minutes. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferenc.
It takes LiUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LiUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LiUNA at liuna.org. That's LiUNA.org.
Are you an experienced mechanical insulator looking to take your career to the next level? Insulators Local 50 in Central Ohio has steady work for a number of years. Insulators Local 50 offers a total wage and benefits package that can't be beat. It's not just the competitive wages. Local 50 also provides medical, vision, and dental insurance with no paycheck deductions for you and your family. Don't miss out on the chance to secure your future. Join us at Insulators Local 50. Earn great pay and the best benefits. Visit insulators50.com/AWF50 to fill out the online form, and a Local 50 representative will call to begin the process. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
This portion of the show brought to you by the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. For more information, please visit bacweb.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at LiUNA.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferenc with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. By the way, this next segment on the show brought to you in part by the United Labor Agency, ulagency.org is their website. Let's go back to our live line and rejoin Peter Manikowski. Peter's president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association, website PSRAofficials.com. This is an association that's been around since 2009, and they're currently locked out. Now, they had a lockout in 2014, and you were telling me off the air, I like to know what's changed here, because you were telling me that 5 years ago, 2019, I guess things went really well. And now it's a different story. What happened here, Peter? Can you tell us?
Well, I think it comes down to a lot of the leadership over at Major League Soccer, the leadership over at Pro, the employer over there, which is in 19. Although we had our difficult contract negotiation, it was difficult. We got there. We got there in a timely way, and it was really at that moment, management had a good recognition of our value. And a deep appreciation for what we were doing. And those managers, it's a different crew of managers. They have someone at Major League Soccer who, at the moment, is set out to put the union in its place. Coincidentally, he was also one of the guys who was around in 2014 when the last lockout happened. And, these lockout and bullying tactics, as opposed to, positive management and good open communication, make all the difference in contentious bargaining, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Where you can sometimes get more with honey than a strong vinegar, and boy, isn't that true over here in labor too.
It sounds to me that management is kind of tone deaf here. They're not listening to the workers at all. Is that the impression I'm getting here in this conversation?
I I think that's the bottom line, really, which is in Major League Soccer, that league is growing with record revenues, big growth in ticket sales, full stadiums almost everywhere you go, and the league is really jumping, and the officials are on a slow climb, and we continue to tell them that, which is make us part of the growth, make us part of the revenue. We're not looking for a revenue share, but we're looking to keep up with the growth that we're seeing around us. And what they're asking the referees to do is to not believe their eyes. And we tell them, this league is growing. Let's be part of the growth. And there's no reciprocation on the other end. And that lack of listening is what's probably the root cause of the trouble today.
Sure. You call this a David and Goliath type of situation. Can you elaborate on that, Peter? Well,
sure. We've got 100 officials and a union of 260 people together with the referee community. Those are small numbers when you go up against 30 teams that are owned by billionaires. And that's the situation we face ourselves. We put together a work stoppage fund for our own members, where the members scrapped and saved for now 6-7 years, and really put it together. But that came at an enormous sacrifice to each one. And our membership is small, but we're mighty, and we've planned and we put it together in the hopes of extracting a better contract from Goliath, from 3029 owners who are billionaires, multimillionaires.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it is. Now, I understand you sent letters to all the officials and management here, kind of like spelling everything out. When was that sent, and did they react right away? Did they not react? What can you tell me about that?
We, on the first day of the regular season back on the 21st of February, what really started the ball rolling in a direction that we didn't really expect was the commissioner of Major League Soccer going on the television saying the union members don't know what it wants, the union committee isn't put together, they don't know what their people want, we had a deal with the union committee, how dare it not ratify, and comments like this. And when the commissioner of Major League Soccer goes on an international television network on Apple TV and is saying these types of comments, it was deeply offensive to the members. It was deeply offensive to the union leadership, because we told them what we wanted, and they wouldn't listen. And then to see this on international television was really a difficult thing. So of course we played our part and wrote to the commissioner, wrote to management, and I don't know if the commissioner was feeling hurt by what we wrote back, but that's when things turned into a real bitter dispute, something that we didn't expect. But I don't know if it's management ego or trying to prove a point or busting the union. One of these things has caused us to really turn bitter.
Well, you mentioned what they did on Apple TV, and that's just one platform. Were you able to respond to Apple or maybe another platform to say, hey, wait a minute, what this guy said is wrong. Here's our side of the story. Has that happened? Other than America's workforce? I mean, you're telling the story to our listeners here, but other than that.
Sure, and we made our story known almost immediately using social media, using a network of soccer officials that we have, with some open letters. We have some excellent video that our group put together, telling the story of referees and what we do and how this job is affects us and things like that. And we really had some help with labor that we've reached out to and the labor movement to help, retweet our stuff or post it on their social media. And that made all the difference to our people. It certainly, brightened their spirits, but it also got our message out. And that's what it's all about, is labor standing together. We had folks from the Teamsters in Manhattan, 704, come over and help us on the picket line. We had Local 100 out of New York also helped us on the picket line. APFA helped us on the picket line. And labor working together is where we really draw our strength.
Yeah, that's what labor does. Peter, I'm going to throw this at you. You know you got an uphill battle with the public, and I'll tell you why. Most people don't like refs. I think you probably know that by now, don't you?
Yeah, it's a hard one, but I got to tell you a story. Is in Austin. Austin's had 2 home games so far this season, and Austin supporters group has really been fantastic with us. They've written songs that they've been singing in the stadium. They had signs made up. They had leaflets, and interestingly enough, their leaflets were confiscated by stadium staff this past weekend, and saying you violated league policy or something like this. And this is simple leaflets, red and yellow pieces of paper. And the league confiscating them from fans, going into the stadium to show their appreciation for labor, to show their appreciation for the referees. Both warms our hearts, but at the same time is a bully tactic that's completely not necessary here. Which is, if you side with the union, express that you've been, that you side with the union, tell people how you feel. But then to have your leaflets taken away is uncalled for. Yeah.
It's a tough environment here. And to your point, the owners here making a whole lot of money. You see this in, all professional sports today. There's a struggle going on. They want to make more. And then on top of it, when they build these stadiums, they want taxpayers to help them out in the construction costs, so they can make more money down the road. But that's another story. So my hat's off to you and all the members here. We're talking with Peter Manikowski, president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association. The website is PSRAofficials.com. We're talking 260 strong. The lockout, which started on February 18th, impacting about 100. And as Peter pointed out, this is a David versus Goliath situation. So keep us posted here on America's Workforce. And you said, did I hear correctly, there's some negotiations or at least some outreach today, and then that's pretty much what's on the table then? Is that right?
Well, they demanded that we revote that TA by today.
Okay.
And that's what's facing us. We don't have any plans to do that because we don't respond well to bullies. Just as soccer officials might not. So that's what's facing us. But look, bargaining in good faith is where the action is at, and that's exactly what we'll do to settle this matter.
Well, Peter, you got a friend here on America's Workforce, so please keep in touch with us, okay?
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Anytime. Peter Manikowski is president of the Professional Soccer Referees Association, PSRAofficials.com. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Julie Hedrick will be joining us on behalf of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants. Back in a few.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LiUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LiUNA. Find out what it takes for LiUNA to keep America running at LiUNA.org. That's LiUNA.org.
The Alliance for American Manufacturing is a nonprofit, nonpartisan partnership formed back in 2007 by some of America's leading manufacturers and the United Steelworkers. Their mission is simple: strengthen American manufacturing and create new private sector jobs through smart public policies. Key word there is smart. We need to be smarter than ever in today's highly competitive world. The Alliance for American Manufacturing believes that an innovative and growing manufacturing base is vital to America's economic and national security, as well as providing good jobs for future generations. Good jobs today, good jobs tomorrow. Good American jobs. Find out more at americanmanufacturing.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Iron Workers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
Union members need to be heard. Reliable and convenient union voting has never been more important than it is now. Make voting easy for your membership by working with survey and ballot systems. SBS offers encrypted and monitored solutions that ensure your elections are accurate and accessible for every member through mail-in, online, and in-person voting. Visit surveyandballotsystems.com and take the next step in getting secure and auditable elections.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Auto Workers. Find more at uaw.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the Ohio Federation of Teachers. You can find more at oh.aft.org. Let's go to our live line right now. Welcome another newcomer to the show. Julie Hedrick is her name. She is a native of Huron, Ohio, and for 41 years, she's been working as a flight attendant. She, for the last almost 4 years now, is national president of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants. This is the certified collective bargaining representative for the American Airlines group and all their flight attendants. And recently, they had a walkout on February 13th. We're going to talk about that. But we're talking off the air here. So you became president when the pandemic hit. I mean, all these years as a flight attendant, you get to national office and boom, everything explodes. That had to be a very challenging time in your life, Julie Hedrick.
To say the least. When we came in April 1st, we were fighting at that time with the company to allow us to wear masks. COVID was now coming into full swing in April of that year. And, fighting for our flight attendants to make sure that they were working on, clean aircraft and for our passengers, right? So we went through a lot when we first started, just trying to make sure that our flight attendants and our passengers were safe. We were also, at that time, we started working together day one with the other flight attendant unions, AFA, which represents about 20 airlines, and also TWU 556, which represents Southwest. We started working together, sending letters off at that time to the government about the payroll support program. And our flight attendants became very integral in fighting to make sure that any funds that came from the government at that time were spent on the employees, not on management, and not management taking bonuses like we've seen in the past.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a really busy time.
Yeah, when they get money, they try to keep as much for themselves and not, give it to the people that are doing the work for the company. And that's exactly what we're talking about here on the show. So on February 13th, I mean, this was what would they call this, a worldwide flight attendant day of action. Let's start right there. Why February 13th? Why was that day picked, Julie?
Well, listen, there are about over 100,000 flight attendants right now in contract negotiations. And what you're seeing today is more than ever, flight attendants across this country voting to be able to authorize the unions to go on strike. And on February 13th, Alaska Airlines, which is one of the most recent to have this vote with their flight attendants, that was their day of that their vote closed. And they were going to be announcing that day how many voted yes to go on strike, which was a overwhelming 99.48% voted yes to go on strike. Southwest Airlines had just recently, last month, also voted overwhelmingly to go on strike. And at American, 99.47% of our flight attendants back in August authorized the union to be able to go on strike if we couldn't come to contract talks that got contracts that our flight attendants deserved. So we have been working together, like I said, for 4 years, and we've all been in discussions throughout these negotiations and trying to make sure that across the industry we address certain areas in our contracts that haven't been addressed before. One of them is boarding pay, and I don't know if you've heard anything about boarding pay, but it's the most chaotic time of our workday is when all of the passengers are boarding our aircraft and we're not paid our hourly rate at that time. And so that has been something that across the system we want to add to our contracts. Our flight attendants definitely have been, complaining about this for many, many years. And that's one of the areas that we're trying to improve across all union contracts these days. Of course, we are all trying to get pay raises for our flight attendants. At American, we have been without a pay raise for 5 years, totally unacceptable. And we have been in negotiations. We started these negotiations back in 2019, and then, of course, had to pause during COVID because that was not a time to be negotiating any contract. And we were actually just trying to survive at that time. And then we resumed our talks for negotiations in August of 21. So we've been back at the table for about 2.5 years. And I can tell you at American, we feel we are definitely at an impasse in these negotiations. Our company has only passed one economic proposal across the table in all this time, and that was back in September of 23. And it's not sufficient. Our flight attendants will not pass a contract with what they are proposing. And so we have asked the National Mediation Board to be released from our negotiations and to be able to exercise a right to strike.
And that's difficult to do because there's the thing called the Railway Labor Act that requires unions like yours to send a request to the National Mediation Board. And I know when we were talking with the folks in the rail industry, because that was the issue over paid sick leave, as you may recall. And there were like 12, 13 unions involved there, and you got this you got this roadblock here in order to walk out, and that's a process in itself. But I want to go back a little bit. You talked about the boarding time. It baffles me that you're not paid for that. And to your point, yes, it is a very crazy time for flight attendants getting everybody lined up to go on the plane, and you're not getting paid except for what is it, Delta. And I was talking about this recently. Now, Delta, except for the pilots union, they're pretty much they're non-union over there. Now, that's most likely a tactic to keep the union out, you think, because they are paying their flight attendants for boarding time?
It's 100% a tactic to keep the unions out. AFA CWA has been working on organizing the Delta flight attendants now for a couple of years. And you see this commonly over at Delta is when they feel that the union is actually making progress and is going to get, what they need to bring that union on property, Delta all of a sudden will give a really good pay raise, or they will give boarding pay as the last tactic they use. And so, yes, they are the first. They've had it about a year now, and we are, the rest of the industry is going to make sure that we get this into our contracts. When we come to work, our normal duty day is about a 12.5-hour duty day, 12, 13 hours. That is if we're flying domestic. And we're only guaranteed half of that. So our duty days can be very long, especially when you consider delays that sometimes happen at airlines. And, we're only guaranteed half our hourly rate for that. Like a 12-hour day, I'm guaranteed 6 hours of pay. There's a lot of time in our day that we are unpaid. When we are sitting waiting for our next flight, we're not paid our hourly rate at that point. If there are delays and we're sitting around even longer, we have no hourly rate at that time. We have to report early to the airport to make sure that we, get that aircraft off on time, and we are not paid from the start of the time we report. So we're trying to make some changes here for, now and for the future. We want to make sure that we correct some of this. This has gone on for a very long time, for my entire career, and you know how long I've been flying. So it's time that we make this change.
It's long overdue, and sadly, I know this is really hurting the flight attendants. Some can't pay for rent. I did a story recently with this was the transport workers. They represent Southwest, and they had flight attendants living in their cars because it's crazy.
Yep. We do too. We have flight attendants who, daily are having to decide how they're going to pay for their rent, their food, or transportation to the airport. Our bases are in 10 of the most expensive cities across this country. And so rent, we negotiated the wages that we are working under back in 2014. And so, as you know, the cost of living has changed dramatically since that time, and our flight attendants are struggling. A lot of them have second and third jobs. And, quite honestly, a lot of our flight attendants are living at home with their parents because they just can't afford to pay the rent on the salaries that they are paid as a flight attendant. And that's really said, it is time for a change. That's why we are ready to exercise our right to strike. And I will tell you, we definitely feel we're at an impasse. We're meeting with the National Mediation Board next month in March, and we get to make our case to them face-to-face as to why we should be released.
This day of action on February 13th, did it kind of raise the level of awareness of what's going on in the industry? Did it get the attention of some of these people, some of these airline executives, in your opinion?
Well, listen, if it didn't, then I don't know where they were hiding that day, but we were all over the news everywhere across this country and actually across the world. We also had picketing events in Guam and in London. And we were everywhere on the media. I can tell you our passengers, we've seen better support for this round of contract talks for flight attendants than I've ever seen in all my years. The passengers are definitely standing with us, and they support us. And so it is, I would say, for the flight attendants across this country, Tuesday was a historic day for all of us. It's the first time ever that unions for flight attendants have joined together at so many airports across the country. And, we're fighting corporate greed. Like many working class Americans, this is corporate greed. We're seeing our CEOs take millions of dollars in bonuses while we haven't had a raise in 5 years. While we have flight attendants who are making $27,000 a year before taxes are taken out and struggling to eat. I just flew home last week, and the flight attendant that was on my flight, he's a new flight attendant. He's about 8 months, and he said he had $1 in his pocket until payday, which was 9 days away. This is heartbreaking. It is unacceptable that this is what's happening. And we know it's not just flight attendants. We know there are many working class Americans that are having to deal with the same thing. And obviously you can tell by the last year, there are many who are standing up. And at the airlines, like you said with the railroads, it's a little bit different. We have an extra step to be able to be released to strike, and we're doing that. We're taking that extra step right now with the National Mediation Board so that we can do what the auto workers have done, right? The Writers Guild, the Actors Guild, so many unions across this country were able to achieve this last year. Nurses, right? We're seeing everyone the last year being able to go on strike and get the contracts they deserve.
Yeah, it's your time. It's your time.
It is
so
our time.
You mentioned in March. Do you have a date in March for that National Mediation Board meeting?
Yes, we're meeting March 13th with the National Mediation Board. We'll be negotiating in Washington, D.C. on the 12th and on the 14th, and the day in the middle we'll be meeting with the National Mediation Board. Okay. Well, we will continue to cover it here on America's Workforce. You got a friend over here, Julie. And a dear friend. We appreciate that. you're an Ohio native. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and this is all my kids still live here. So you got that Midwest fire in you. So you keep it going. All right. Thank you. Julie Hedrick, National President of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, representing 27,000 flight attendants at American Airlines. APFA.org, APFA.org. And also on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can follow them at APFA Unity. Okay, APFA Unity. Julie, stay safe, stay strong, and stay in touch. Okay, my sister? Thank you so much for having me on today. Really appreciate it. And stay tuned. We will hopefully be able to exercise our right to strike very soon. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, the Communication Workers of America and the Ohio AFL-CIO. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day. That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.